Thank you everyone for attending. My name is Barb Headrick. I am the current president of the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley, and we appreciate you showing up for this voter forum for District 3, am I correct? For Moorhead City Council. All right. Ward 3, sorry. I'm getting beat by a technicality. Just a few announcements before we will get formally started here. I want to start off by thanking the Moorhead Library for lending us their space, as they are so generously do so whenever we have voter forums in Moorhead, and providing us with even a bigger space than in the past. It's very, very nice. We appreciate all of their help. And if you get a chance, go take a look at the suffrage display that's in the back, along the back wall. You might see some things that interest you there. I want to thank the MCAM for recording this evening, and their recording will go into the now Sparklight public access channel, and then up to YouTube as well. And Midco too. Okay, Midco too. All right, and also I'd like to thank for the presence of the AAUW here tonight, who has some information for anybody about the brand new Minnesota presidential primary that will be held in March, but according to the flyer I was given, early voting starts January 17th. So if you really make up your mind early, and you're absolutely sure that your candidate will still be there in March, you can go ahead and vote early. They've got a handout for you with more information and everything. As always, we thank the League of Women Voters volunteers that help us put these things together. Special thanks goes out to Les and Bev for seemingly coming back all the way from Arizona to help us out. The League of Women Voters itself is a nonpartisan organization that's dedicated to informing citizens about their government and their role in our political system for everyone to join in. Anyone can join the League of Women Voters. There is, among the suffrage display, you'll find some of our membership brochures. The only criteria we have is that you be a citizen and be able to, you can even join as a college student at a reduced rate. We got any college students in here? Okay. All right, so we have 5 candidates here today for Ward 3. Brent Beam, John Bell, Edwin Hahn, Troy Krappenhoff, who's, is Troy? Troy has not here yet, but hopefully they'll show up. And Larry Seljevold, and they will be giving a 1-minute opening statement, and then if you all, this is the part we need your all's help with, we need questions that you want answered for them, all right? So see somebody, Bev here has cards, we've got pencils, please write down a question to be asked to the candidates. Each candidate will get 1 minute to respond to the question, and then either when we get to 45 minutes or the questions run out, we will do a 2-minute closing. All right? Oh yes, and we do have a timer. Carol is our timer, so watch her sign so she doesn't have to ding the bell. All right? And we're usually a little bit flexible. Give us a start, Mr. Beam.
Good evening to all of you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. My name is Brent Beam, and I am a candidate for City Council in Ward 3. There are several things that I think Moorhead does enormously well. I am a very proud resident of Moorhead, and one of the things that I most appreciate about the city is that I felt welcomed immediately when I arrived just over 5 years ago. Every other city I've been in, I've sort of experienced cliques and this sort of thing, but Moorhead was immediately welcoming, and I appreciate that. The things that I would like to see more of in Moorhead, ensuring equitable development, that new development doesn't detract from existing, and that we respect and upkeep our existing neighborhoods and infrastructure. Another thing is to enhance opportunities. We live in an increasingly fractured culture. We live a lot more of our life online. That's a minute. All right. Whatever we can do to increase public engagement would be amazing. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Bell, and before I start, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this candidate forum, and for all of you for being here tonight. I'm glad to be running for the Moorhead City Council. I moved to Moorhead back in 2011 when I started my undergraduate degree at Concordia. It was the only place I applied because I knew I wanted to come here and live. After I graduated, I decided to stay. I bought my house in 2016. I live just a few blocks south of Woodlawn Park, and I love it. I've served various ministries in Moorhead and Fargo since July of 2015, and I'm now serving at St. John Lutheran Church in Fargo as their finance manager. I'm also a private music teacher with over a dozen students. I'm a service-driven person, whether it's my work in nonprofits or serving on boards and committees. I've always viewed those roles at the end of the day as serving the community, serving the people. And if I'm elected, that's the exact kind of leadership I plan to offer. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited to hear your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hahn?
Thank you. My name is Edwin Hahn, and I believe in freedom, collaboration, and advancement of this community. I've been a resident of Northwest Minnesota for 17 years, and I've lived in Moorhead for 1 year. I moved to Moorhead because of necessity, but I'm staying in Moorhead because of opportunity. The opportunity to serve, the opportunity to be a part of something greater than myself, and the opportunity to share what I've been given and to lift up this community. Moorhead has been sowing and cultivating for years, preparing for the future. Thank you for allowing me to be a laborer and bringing forth a great harvest.
Thank you. Mr. Seljevold?
And yes, thank you very much for hosting this forum. My name is Larry Seljevold. I basically am a lifelong resident of this community. I went to school here, high school, college, and continue to work here. I live here even though I work over in Fargo. I've been on the city council once before. I got off it because I took an extended vacation with my son, and I thought I would be I was out of the city for quite a while, so I let somebody else try their job at it, try their hand at it. I look forward to maybe the possibility of getting back on the council and seeing the future, being involved in the future development of Moorhead. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will start with our first question. I'm combining similar questions here all together because they're both covering the sale of City Hall. What are your thoughts about the sale of City Hall without voter input and approval? And what do you think about the replacement of the library? And we start with Mr. Bell.
So I think one thing about the sale of City Hall, I think there's a lot more information we all need to know about it to really have a strong opinion. I think redeveloping downtown Moorhead has been on everyone's mind for decades, right? And City Hall, the mall, the library, this is all part of it. And I'm excited to see what Roars comes up with as far as their plan for the city. I trust the city council in the decisions that they've been making. I know for a lot of residents, being behind closed doors with some of these discussions is really frustrating, but I know sometimes that can be a necessity when contracts are being discussed, when plans are being discussed. But I'm really just super excited to see what can happen. Now, with the library, I love this building. You'd have to convince me of a real necessity to replace it. Obviously we can always invest more in improvements, technology-wise, but I think overall we're in a good place.
Looking at the number of questions we have so far, and because there's only 4 of you, Carol, why don't we go to 2 minutes for the answers? So we'll give Mr. Bell another minute if there's something else you'd like to add.
Sure, why not? Yeah, so I think, and as far as the city hall goes, you know, I haven't spent too much time in there yet. I actually got to visit for the first time when I was filing to be a candidate. But obviously there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done on that building. I think we're all aware of that. And figuring out whether or not is it more cost effective to sell it to a corporation, perhaps to rent out that space, or just fix it and have the city stay there. Again, this is so early, right? And I think we can easily jump to conclusions with a lot of these things. But I trust the council's guidance on this so far, as they really know what's going on, even if we don't always know. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hahn?
Thank you. So the city hall and the mall adjacent is a key element in the downtown, the core of Moorhead. And you can always gauge the spirit and the pulse of a community by its downtown. And I think that for certain, what's happening and the movement, the direction towards revitalization and renovating the city hall and the mall is in the right direction. It's in the positive direction. There definitely should be feedback from the voters. I'm surprised there hasn't been. So at least some type of a survey or community response that is a dedicated, directed attempt at getting a voter input. That's what I would recommend for certain. But I'm very excited to see, again, the plans and what's happening with Roar and that relationship with the city. Whether or not, I'd just love to see more. I'd like to learn more about the project before I make any final decisions on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seljevold?
Well, I've heard over and over again, something has to happen downtown. And so it's exciting that something is apparently going to happen. It's pretty early to make judgments about whether it will be sold or renovated or how, but something's going to happen down there, and that will be a good thing for the city of Moorhead. The library, it's a great location. I guess what you have to see is the plans and what's available. If it's you come up with a better building, a better situation, then it might be done. So it's always kind of, I think it's a wait and see what people show in blueprints and then go from there.
Thank you. Mr. Beam?
I think that with downtown in general, that we have missed opportunity after opportunity in Moorhead. We know that things will be changing. I think it's going to take a keen eye to sort of oversee what happens in downtown Moorhead. I don't know specifically how City Hall functions for the people that work in City Hall. As a citizen, it sort of seems a bit like a fortress. It sort of seems a little bit off-putting. It is perhaps not as welcoming as we might want it to be as citizens. Toward the notion of citizen engagement, though, I do honestly feel that we need to present to all the people of the city in a very easily digestible way where they can see what the city is coming up with, what the planners are coming up with what architects and engineers are coming up with. So far, these things don't seem to be readily accessible to the public. We need to be asking a lot of questions about what the public needs and how public perception affects all of these elements. Specifically about the library, again, this is another thing where I think we need to be talking to the user groups of the library. We need to be talking to the staff of the library to see how these things function, and also look at budgets. Maybe it is that we have this, continue to have this operating, but as our city continues to grow, perhaps a branch library might be a valuable asset as well. Again, these things, it's not a wait and see approach, we need to put the information out in front of the public and really get moving on these things to create a better downtown.
I've been asked to remind all the candidates to get the microphone as close as possible to you when you're speaking so that they do pick it up on the video as well as throughout the audience. I think it helps both. So especially for you two that are sharing, make sure you get it, and Mr. Beam, make sure you get it close to it. Yeah, you pretty much got to be, if you're really going to be heard, you got to be like this close, because this is not high-powered microphones. Okay. All right. Let's go to a totally different topic. We start with Mr. Hahn this time. What is your view of the city logo?
Well, I've seen at least one of the new logos that's been proposed. I'm familiar with the old logo. I do believe that the logo does need a little bit of refreshing, and I think that the city's making a valiant attempt at a rebrand or at bringing forth a new image or kind of moving into the next generation of Moorhead. And along with that, just continuing to work on measures that will retain youth and retain students who are graduating or students who are coming to the area and spending some time and just providing a place where they can live, shop, eat, work, play, and retain our youth. So on the logo piece, I'm glad to see there's some movement there. I definitely want to continue the community engagement part. I know that has been an effort that the city continues to take on, and so I look forward to working more on the logo.
Thank you. Mr. Seljevold?
You know, I like the old logo. I like the idea of trying to rebrand ourselves and trying to make more and more proud of itself. Does it need to go in? Do you need to make a new logo? I don't think that's necessary. I think you have to develop pride and talk about your strengths. And I think that's some of the purposes of the new logo and the effort of campaigning for Moorhead is to have pride in living in 56560. I don't think the logo plays that big of a deal. It's not that important. So if it happens, if it helps, but I don't mind the old logo at all.
Mr. Beam?
So,
Get that mic right.
all right,
Keep going.
I'm not gonna eat it. So, okay. So the logo, the new version of the logo is tragic. That said, the logo is not really a critical element of the operation of a city. It just isn't. But it is something that is lighthearted and fun, and it can be an engaging thing. That said, I think the most important thing about this logo sort of ordeal that we're contending with right now is that we went to outside sources for the logo. We have a lot of talent in this city, in this region, and we tend to farm out a lot of work. And I'm not sure we have graphic design schools in the city. We have professional graphic designers all over the place. And we went outside to achieve that. We're not talking about erecting a 40-story building, which nobody has done here yet. It's a logo. We can do this. And I think we should. Not because it's the most important thing in the world, but just because we want to show support for the people that live and work in this town.
Thank you. Mr. Bell?
So by the time I had seen the new proposed logo, so many people on Facebook had already commented on it, and quite strong opinions, which mostly I agreed with. I think that the proposed logo really didn't embrace who we were as a city, right? We are a border city, right? We are a city that thrives on the arts. We are a university town, right? These are all things that just weren't really part of it, and for good reason that we didn't move forward with that logo. And that's a great example of citizen engagement in the city, so I think we should all applaud ourselves on that. But I actually think that a logo can be really important to the identity of a city. The place where I work at right now, we're trying to do a new logo, and I am fully aware of how difficult it is to get everyone on board with what are these few elements that really can bring us all together and say, yeah, that's where I live, right? That's hard, right? As far as the current logo, I'm not even going to call it the old logo because it's still our logo right now. The current logo, you know, I think with it being the Hjomkomst Center, I think is really important because that's a huge part of our identity here, right? We have that heritage here. Maybe the new logo could include that if we do pursue with the new logo. But for right now, I think I really like it. I encourage people to think about what you would like, and if we were to pursue this on the council again, to suggest ideas, right? And of course, having it be a local company that really understands what the citizens love about this place. And at the end of the day, we all need to love it. And if we don't, we'll do it again, or we'll keep the one that we have.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Mr. Seljevold. What is your opinion on the city council building a dog park in the floodplain?
Well, we need a dog park on the south side. Whether it ends up in the floodplain or not, I'm not certain. I've heard yes and no on that. It needs to be done. Well, people want a dog park on the south side of town, and I think something needs to happen. And if it ends up in the floodplain, I'm sure it's going to need to be washed, maybe even carried out. But it needs to go somewhere in River Oaks Point, and probably at the highest point away from the road is probably the best place. So,
Thank you. Mr. Beam?
Well, I hope all the dogs can swim. But no, I don't think that the floodplain necessarily is so much of an issue for the dog park. It is an amenity that people seem to want. We're always going to have certain people that do not want certain things in their own neighborhood. And this is something that we're going to wrestle with not just dog parks, but with issue after issue after issue. The best we can do is to provide as many amenities for the city at as low a cost as possible and do our best to hear what people's commentary is about that, whether it be negative or positive or otherwise. But in general, yes, I'm in favor of that dog park.
Mr. Bell?
I'm also in favor of the dog park. I definitely understand the concern of it being in the floodplain. That's just how it goes in Moorhead, I suppose. You know, it's either in or out, and it's a 50-50 shot maybe sometimes. But as far as whether we need it or not, I think it's really important that we do have it. Currently, you know, the dog park in North Moorhead, that can be quite a drive for some people, especially if you're living in some of the new developments in South Moorhead. So I think that it's important that we have that there. And increasing our amenities in South Moorhead in general, not just a dog park, but other parks as well, walking trails, things like that. And those things are going to end up in the floodplain. And that's just something we're good at here in Moorhead, is dealing with things in the floodplain, aren't we? I live near Woodlawn Park. That gets flooded just about every other year, right? It's just something we have to deal with, and of course, citizen engagement is really important on this topic. And I'm glad that it's concerning to people where we put things, but I am in favor of it as it currently stands.
Thank you. Mr. Hahn?
So from my experience, new developments and anything new, any kind of change within a community tends to be scary. There's some unknowns. There's also some misunderstood, or we'll call it misrepresented, facts or truths that can sometimes propagate. And one of them may be that the dog park would maybe be an eyesore, or possibly whether or not it's the floodplain is an issue or not, but this idea of that it's not in my backyard. And so it was an impromptu survey taken at Concordia, where 16 students were surveyed, and only one, they were asked, do you intend to stay in Moorhead after you graduate? And only one said that they were intending to stay. And so we need to continue to provide and build infrastructure that will attract youth, will attract the next generation, that will attract young professionals to come live, work, eat, play here in Moorhead, so that we can continue to prosper and grow and be relevant into the next generation. So when it comes to the dog park, I think maybe it's a matter of education as far as how the floodplain and how often it will be flooded and what type of infrastructure will be affected in the dog park, being it's mostly grass and fence. And the other piece is probably education about how that dog park is actually going to increase the value of your home, because it's going to draw in people and be an amenity that the community is going to want to enjoy.
Thank you. We have a new question now. We start again with Mr. Beam. Do you support the school district's bond referendum and the rebuilding of the high school?
This again gets to sort of the growth that we're experiencing in Moorhead. The high school is currently sort of at or over capacity. Something has to be done. Now, whether this is going to be 2 high schools, 1 mega high school, I don't know what determination has been made toward that end. And it seems to me that we have to provide whatever amenity. I'm sorry? Please speak up. It seems to me that we need to provide whatever amenities are necessary to keep the people in this community. People content and keep our education system at a high a level as it has been for the past years. So yes, I am in favor of this bond issue.
Thank you. Mr. Bell?
So first I'll start off by saying, yes, I do support this bond issue. For me personally, I think that our public schools should be palaces, because if we don't educate our children well, that is a detriment to the rest of society, right? We grow as a community when we have good schools. And I did not go to school in Moorhead for my, K through 12. But I constantly hear about how great the programs are at Moorhead High School, for example. The speech program, the theater program, right? These are things that we are proud of as a community. Now, we'll see how the voters decide in November as to whether or not this is the plan they want to go forward with. And if this isn't, then we'll have to go back to the drawing board and see, maybe it will be 2 high schools, maybe it will be renovated, we'll see how it goes. But as it stands right now, I am glad that we are pursuing this option, because right now the school is over capacity. And that is hurting our students, and we owe it to them to pass this. Thank you.
Oh, yes, we have our 5th candidate standing in the back, so come on in, Mr. Krabenhoff. We'll fit you in here.
He's in Ward 4. This is,
Oh,
no, it's not Krabenhoff. It's not.
okay. This is for the 7:30. This is for the 7:30. Glad you all were here. Mr. Hahn, your turn on the referendum.
Well, I believe that the top 3 assets that the community has are schools, arts, and that we're a college town. And so to continue to build on those assets and again, allow the community to be relevant as we move forward to 2025 and beyond, I believe it's crucial for us to continue to invest in schools and to continue that economic development. So I definitely support what's happening with the bond. One thing I will say when it comes to infrastructure, my experience has been sometimes when we build something that is very, very nice, it's the gift that keeps on taking. That there's definitely maintenance that goes along and upkeep and different pieces when it comes to community infrastructure, like a school or a hockey arena or a swimming park, that we need to look at and make sure that we're doing our due diligence and we provide sustainable solutions for that infrastructure, so that the ongoing costs can be mitigated and the taxpayers don't have to have such a high burden.
Thank you. Mr. Seljevold?
I will be voting in favor of the referendum. I think for the people up here who may end up serving on the council, I think in the next year, the ramifications are the city might have to tighten its belt a little bit, because people are going to have if it passes, they're going to be paying more in taxes. So the city ought to maybe tighten their belt a little bit, so that the taxpayers don't feel overwhelmed by taxes. But I will be voting in favor, because I think strong schools build a strong community.
Thank you. We move now to our next question, starting with Mr. Bell. What are the issues particular to the 3rd Ward that the city can help address?
Well, one thing with Ward 3 is flood protection. For most of us, we probably live within a few blocks of the river. And so I even know with me in my house this past spring, I was worried that my house is going to be underwater. You could talk to some of my coworkers at the time, and I asked them, should I buy flood insurance? Because I was really worried, right? And I think a lot of my neighbors were too. Of course, I was sat down by one of my friends and said, John, the council has done such a great job with building up the flood protection in Ward 3. You're gonna be fine. And that was a turning point for me. But I think those concerns are still great. As far as the diversion goes, right, that will benefit people in Ward 3, and of course a lot of people in Ward 1 on the west side of that ward. Another thing would be our roads. There's a good chunk of Ward 3 that's in an older part of town, and some of those roads have just gone unmaintained for a really, really long time. And that's really unfortunate. My roads, I'm on a corner, both of my roads need to have work done. And that's something that I think we can all agree on, that we need to get done. The potholes, repaving altogether. And other things, I think some more amenities. Woodlawn Park isn't technically part of Ward 3, it's just north of Ward 3. But I'd like to see more done there. It's a great place for the community to join together. Gooseberry, more programming there, and of course Blue Stem. So, thank you.
Mr. Hahn?
Absolutely. So the flood diversion project is a project that the city has invested in and has committed to. And we still have an outstanding about a $40 million commitment still left on that project. And so that will carry the floodplain part, the southern part and Ward 3 into centuries beyond, and protect an asset that will protect the community. Another piece that's come up in Ward 3 is the turkeys. I'm not as aware of what the DNR does with the turkeys, how they regulate the turkeys within the city. But I think there might be just brainstorming some opportunities to maybe have a turkey lottery and have some tickets or a what we call an opportunity to harvest some turkeys if they are a nuisance. So maybe that's an issue in Ward 3 to think about.
Thank you. Mr. Seljevold?
Within Ward 3 and on the borders of Ward 3, we do have some businesses that are vacant. We lost our Family Fare grocery store. There are times with that mall, Brookdale Mall, there's been vacancies and they've been filled. As you cross A Street, you go over the interstate, on the border of 3rd Ward, we have an old Sun Mart. So basically, those type of things, the redevelopment of those commercial areas, whether they're, I guess some of them are not right in Ward 3, but they basically are very close to us, that they're a convenience for us. Those things hopefully can be redeveloped so that they're more useful to the people around them. And then the other thing was the amenities in certain parks. You know, we don't have a neighborhood school, we don't have a Riverside anymore, and what we do have are parks, and if we can enhance those parks in some way, maybe we can put in a splash park or some other new playground, whatever, so that those areas are attractive to families to move into with young children. And so I think, I guess, redeveloping a commercial area and strengthening our amenities so that the neighborhood is very attractive to families, especially young families.
Thank you. We start with a new question with Mr. Bell. What is the role of the arts in Moorhead?
Well, first, as I've mentioned before, Moorhead High School, if you haven't seen a theater production, which I'm assuming most of you have by now, they're fantastic, right? Like state of the art, in my opinion. And how many cities can say that they've had numerous students from the high school end up on Broadway, right? So clearly this city takes the arts very seriously. I have a music degree, and so I also take the arts very seriously. I play the flute and piano. As I said, I teach music in the evenings. You know, there are numerous opportunities, especially with, I think, the Fargo-Moorhead Opera, the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony. Currently, they use NDSU as their performance hall, which is great. But I'd also like to see them more often over on our side of the river, right? They do performances at Concordia sometimes, but I think that arts is an integral part of our city, right? It's something we do really, really well at. Of course, I would love to see protecting the Rourke Art Museum, right? Making sure that there's always open doors there for people to enjoy that art as a gallery and as also a place to just kind of hang out. I love going there. But yeah, I think it's a huge part. I guess that was a long-winded answer. But yeah, thank you.
Mr. Hahn.
Again, the arts are a key asset for Moorhead, and definitely a piece where it will continue to draw. Cultivating and bringing forth the arts will continue to draw and attract the next generation and retain the people that we need to continue to grow this community. So investing in the arts is definitely I support that with a partnership with the city. We have the Yumcombe Center, which is also hosted what's called a rates exhibit. So when I refer to the arts, I'm referring to the cultural arts as well as other what we call type of art. So this is another area I think we can have some collaboration with Fargo. What I mean by that is a collaborative competition. So we have the Plains Art Museum just across the river, and so there's opportunity to also work with them in bringing forth more investment and more collaboration in the arts.
Mr. Seljevold.
I spent 1 year of my life living in a community in Montana, and I learned to appreciate the arts because that town was pretty devoid of the arts. So, I mean, we have an opera, we have a symphony, we have theater productions that they're unreal. I mean, they're so good. They're a vital part. They make Moorhead unique, I guess, or very strong in the arts. One of the things that I guess would be a pet project, I love outdoor art, sculptures. And I remember reading recently about a community in Colorado that in a span of within 10 years, they have like the largest collection of outdoor sculptures in the nation. And I'd like to take that title away from them. I would love it if we went down like 20th Street in Moorhead, and you could look at the different outdoor sculptures that are there, or in my neighborhood, we have kind of a linear park along a bike path, and I would love to have things like that, when you stroll, you have something to look at besides houses and birds and things, but there would be pieces of art that you could just sit around and look at, and give you a purpose to walk. So the arts, very important to Moorhead.
Thank you. Mr. Beam?
So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I think that we are doing a great job right now in Moorhead, but I think this is more than just sort of to be viewed as a kind of a nice amenity for the city. The arts actually can generate revenue. The arts are an important business. Where I came from before, I lived in Houston, Texas, and their museum district, their arts community, drew in more money per year than their football stadium did, and without making any impact on the local infrastructure whatsoever. The nice thing about the arts is that it draws a flow of people that doesn't overwhelm any neighborhood at any point in time. Anything we can do to support this type of community, and whether that's continuing to add local events, it doesn't have to be these large sort of pulse events like opera or things like Blue Stem, but even these smaller sort of neighborhood size events, like why do we have an art walk only once a year? Why can't we open up studios and encourage artists to open up their studios once a month? Or do street events that are arts-centered once a month in the summertime? This town is quiet in the summer, and I think these are the kinds of things that would really give life to the city and not really require much of an investment from us. Thank you.
Next to last question, and I'm combining some things here so we can get all of these submitted ones in. What else do you propose for downtown besides an art center? And this is not my editorial comment, this is the question writers. That is all we hear about. And what do we need to do to compete with Fargo? And we start with Mr. Hahn.
So competing with Fargo, I don't think it's really, that's what I would call, again, this idea of collaborative competition. So the fact that Fargo is right across the river and they're doing their thing, Moorhead definitely has we have our own identity. We have our own sense of who we are, and we're not, we're definitely not going to be Moorhead. Excuse me, not going to be Fargo. We're going to be Moorhead. We're going to have our own identity. We have our own identity. So, moving forward in downtown revitalization and development, we definitely need to have a walkable, pedestrian-friendly downtown, and it's a little bit fractured right now. And to kind of move forward in that is going to require a pretty large investment and a very big vision. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it because there's definitely traction. There's definitely interest. There's definitely desire to make that happen. I think it is very much the key to the future of Moorhead is investing in our downtown. And I suggest also partnering with an organization called Strong Towns, which has been successful in revitalizing downtowns throughout the country. And so that's another asset that I definitely support in partnering with Strong Towns. But again, coming back to the idea that we should provide opportunities for youth to live, work, play, shop, and eat downtown, that's definitely something that I support.
Mr. Seljevold.
I don't really think we're in competition with Fargo. We have what we have to offer, and they have what they have to offer, and sometimes you take advantage of both sides of the river. Downtown, we want more people to come down there. We want more people to live there, and that will attract certain businesses. We want to be able to walk, as it said, and also I think I'm a bicyclist. We like to be able to bicycle downtown. I think there are people out there that commercial developers and so on, they're going to have their ideas of what can go in there, and I believe that it's going to have to be very unique shops. I don't think, and those are the types of things that will attract people downtown. So I guess I'm open for suggestions. I guess I don't know exactly what needs to be there. So we'll see what other people come up with. Yep.
Mr. Beam?
I agree that we are not Fargo, nor should we try to be Fargo. I think we have tremendous opportunities, though, to be something better than what we are. Right now, the growth that is occurring in Fargo is quite stunning, and seems to me that we might be missing out on some of that. So I think it would be beneficial if we come up with ways where we can attract some of the people and retain some of the people that might otherwise want to leave for whatever reason to the Fargo side. I think we can make this a haven, a home for small business owners, for entrepreneurs. I think Fargo, especially in downtown, is getting to be far too expensive for a lot of small business owners. So we, as a city, can encourage that. We don't have the same real estate prices that they have on that side of the river. Towards this notion of a walkable city, we have right now, beyond a fractured downtown, we have a downtown that just doesn't feel like a downtown anymore. We have an opportunity, though. It's almost a clean slate in a way. We have a lot of vacant land, and we need to encourage some infill into those areas and come up with clever proposals that offer unique opportunities for people. We should be encouraging innovation in our downtown, and that's not only innovation in business, but innovation in the way people conduct business, and support that.
Thank you. Mr. Bell?
So there's a couple different things that I can think of that would be nice in downtown. One would be a community center, something indoors that people could go to with their families and hang out at. And maybe this is selfish of me because I'm an arts person, but I would love to see a performance art hall. I don't think that's going to happen, but wouldn't it be nice? I would like to see downtown a little bit more bikeable and walkable. One of the key things that we have to think about with Fargo, I don't think about Fargo as competition. So often I feel like we can talk about Fargo and Moorhead as if it's a zero-sum game between the two of us. Either they get the business or we get the business. But I like to think about us as a community, right? When Fargo does well, Moorhead does well, and vice versa. I know numerous people who live in Moorhead but work in Fargo, and vice versa, right? It's not always so clear. And I think when we talk about Fargo, we can say, okay, what do they have? What are they doing well? That's great. What do we have, and what can we do well too? I think for me, we talk a lot about retaining people, and one of the biggest pulls we have in this community is our universities, right? Thousands of students come into Moorhead every single year to study, and a lot of them leave, right? I am one of few people that I know of from Concordia that decided to stay, and the reason I stayed was because I loved this community. I went out and I saw what we had to offer, and I decided to buy a house here because I knew I wanted to stay here. So we have to figure out a way for when students are here that when they finally decide to leave the bubble of their university that they're studying at, and I was victim to this too, that it's not just going to a bar, right? Because that's really, for some people, that's the only time they get off campus. And that's a fun time too, but Fargo Moorhead has more to offer than that, especially Moorhead. Let's get them to that high school production, right? Like that's great.
Thank you. And because of the time that I see on the wall across the way there, I'm going to have you perhaps answer this last question, because it does fit, with your closing 2-minute statements. So we'll start with Mr. Seljevold. And as you give your final 2 minutes, would you also consider answering, how do you see the Moorhead community changing and benefiting from your contribution on this Moorhead City Council?
Well, thank you. Once again, thank you for hosting this. I hope it's informational for everybody. My I have experience as a council. I've been on the Park Advisory Board. I believe that I have an idea of what the city needs to head towards, and with the help of the council, maybe to get there. It is, I guess, what I think the way I can help it is I'd be open-minded towards certain things and seeing what can occur with collaboration. We have this new development. We have somebody in this up here is going to sit on a council where we're going to revitalize downtown. Ideas are going to have to be hashed out and talked about, and with a clear mind, decisions are going to be made. I think I can help out there, and I think living here and experience the wonderful things about Moorhead, I think will help me in making those decisions. And I guess I look forward to either seeing myself or one of these guys up here serving in the 3rd Ward. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Bean, sorry.
Okay.
Too many Bs.
So I think that my contribution to the city comes from my background. My training and all my work are in design, urban planning, and architecture. I've been doing that for 20 years now, and I do feel that at this critical time in Moorhead, when so much is going to be built, so much is going to be considered, that I would be the best eye to have on the situation. It is not just in sort of evaluating individual buildings or the quality of a specific design, although I can bring that to the table. It is also knowing how to leverage what we already have as a city, how best to utilize the infrastructure that we have, when to build and when not to build. We have to maintain budgets in this city, and I am very cognizant. As a designer, I deal with budgets every single day, and every single client I have wants to go over their budget. That's what we do. But I do my best to rein them in. And this is what I hope to do on a larger scale for the city. I do have considerable experience in this, and I do have considerable experience in this, and I would like to bring that to serve Moorhead. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Bell.
So one thing that I've learned in working in ministry for the last 4 years is you have a lot of committees, you have a lot of details, budgets, buildings that you're taking care of. But at the end of the day, the thing about working in a nonprofit or in a service like being on the city council is that people have to always come first, right? Every decision that we make is going to affect somebody, right? And we always hope that it will affect everybody positively, but we know that sometimes it doesn't, right? And we talk a lot about development and growth in this city, and that's amazing, and we are a growing city, but there are a lot of people that get left behind in these discussions. We have a sizable homeless population that the centers for them are bursting at the seams. They don't have enough beds, and we're in a place that if you're out in the middle of the winter, you could die, right? These are things that we aren't up here talking about right now. We are focused on all these great things about building up our city, but we have to focus on the people and who that's going to be benefiting. I'm a young person. I decided to stay here after college. I think that that's a valuable insight to have on the council when some of these decisions are being made. What can we do with this downtown? What can we do with this new development that is going to convince people that they should call Moorhead their home after they graduate, right? I think that I can add that to the council. And, you know, again, my whole calling here is to serve my constituents if I were to get elected. And I want to be that person for each and every single one of you. If I run into you, you can have my personal cell phone number. Yeah, you could call me about every single pothole at 3 o'clock in the morning. I swear I'll answer. Thank you.
Mr. Hahn, you get the last word.
Thank you. There's an old African adage. It says, if you want to go a short distance quickly, do it by yourself. If you want to go a long distance, you must take a community. And so I believe in collaboration. I believe in unity. I believe in bringing people forth and bringing them together to accomplish great things. Not in the short term, not in a quick, let's get it done now fashion, but in a fashion that will be sustainable and that will continue to last for generations to come. There's going to be a large infrastructure required in revitalizing our downtown. So I propose one thing. One thing is to create and work with our community leaders on a task force which will unlock funds from St. Paul, from the Capitol. I also propose a organic business development task force that will work with our local business leaders and organically grow our local businesses and build on the current growth and the current community leadership that's already existing. And the third piece would be a task force that will engage more of our immigrant population. And I'd like to see us increase representation in city government through the immigrant population. I'd like to see at least 2 times as many immigrants represented in city than now. So with those in mind, I'm confident that Moorhead will advance and will grow with or without me on the council. But from my experience, we can, our choices very much, our choices dictate our life. And from my experience, our choices can sometimes delay our destiny. And so with that, I just want to thank the League of Women Voters and everyone that's out there listening and watching this right now. I thank you for taking your responsibility seriously when it comes to voting, because we live in a free country, fortunately, where we can choose our officials to represent us. So thank you for doing your due diligence, and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, audience members, for your wonderful questions. Thank you to the League volunteers, to the AAUW, for those people who corrected us about the candidate. And thank you so much to you candidates for putting in the time and effort to enhance our democracy as well. We'll take a few minutes here to set up for Ward 4, and we'll get started again.